you mangy dogs. Swab the decks and hoist the sails. The guns on board be needing some proper manning. Pieces of 8 and a fine wench on your arm. If your work be not too shoddy. Careful not to flounder too badly, though, or you may have to dance the hempen jig as we see you to Davy Jones. Jeffy, my boy, on with the show.
Welcome, everybody, friends, folks, foes, and fellow pirate mateys to our weekly edition of Pirate Radio Podcasts. It's episode number 341. I, myself, am your host and companion, as always, the Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, Jeffy Ryder. In the hot seat tonight, we have Brian Ruhe returning to the fold. Episode number 341. Once again, for those of you who didn't get that the first time around, we'll get to his bio and details momentarily. In the meantime, remember, WPRPN.com is the website. You'll want to drop by, check out, take a look at. Keep in mind, as always, sign up is free. All you simply need is a username, password, and email. From there, everything's pretty much straightforward. If you do run into any problems along the way, do not hesitate in getting back to us via our main email address, pirate1radio@protonmail.com. We'll take whatever steps are necessary, helping to smooth things over, get you sailing off in just the sort of direction you hope to be. Be sure as well to check out the show description end of things. We always appreciate any form of support that our listeners can offer in exchange, of course, for the effort that we put into providing the content, whether it be Patreon patronage, purchase of items from the various merchandising outlets we have online. The PayPal approach is a good way to do things as well, using the aforementioned email address, pirate1radio@protonmail.com. That's also handy to keep in mind and take note of if you have any show suggestions or guest ideas you like to bounce off of us. So, liking, commenting, sharing, remembering to hit the subscription notification links, very critical to algorithm recognition. We could definitely stand to benefit from more of that, folks. And passing word along to your friends, family, and co-workers. Really powerful, digital, synergistic action you yourself can take to help get things, sailing along even more splendidly. So, returning to the fold here, first time, 2025, Brian Ruhe. Second consecutive, in fact, it's interestingly to take note of this, Vancouverite we've hosted down in Skull Port Harbour. Last go around, it was Andrew Curry, of course. So you can now check that show out via the archives, whether Rumble, Archive, Odyssey. Facebook and YouTube have yet to delete the show or do what they can in censoring us. So openly and overtly, as far as we can tell. So it's good to see those avenues and options are still on the table. From Buddhist monk to meditation teacher, Brian's latest passion deals with all things University Galacticus, a ufology disclosure concept project he helped co-found back in December 2022. Among other areas we could easily navigate, modern music, Eastern philosophy, mental illness, and how freedom lovers have been coping with Canada's Kastro regime. God, it's been almost 9 years now. I think they're going to definitely play it out, milk it for all it's worth, unfortunately, torturing the Canadian people. Be sure to have all your topic-related thoughts, comments, and questions ready to fire. So, and as we take a look at what we've got rotating through the slideshow end of things, indeed, a couple heroes of free thought, as far as I'm circumcised. Something which on our show we can say without any reservations. Actually, meaning as far as I'm concerned, I guess I misspoke. Maybe, but yeah, Panyabasa Bhikkhu and Brian, all the great work they've been doing over the years, their Dharma talks, and along with what sort of material we're going to get in here momentarily. So before we do that, however, let's bring to the table an old friend, fellow pirate matey, and someone who themselves are, I think it could easily be said a big advocate of free speech rights. I should know. I've spent enough time as co-host on his show the past number of months. The Morning Star Report out of Manhattan, New York. Robert Morningstar. So, Robert, you're making your way up there into the crow's nest.
Yes.
How this is your first chance at actually having that opportunity? How are things looking? You managing? How's your footing? How are the weather conditions?
Fine. I hope I don't get queasy being
Yeah.
thrown about on
Right.
a rocking boat. But rock and roll is my thing.
No sign of the Kraken, or rather the technKRAKEN yet? Or
The Kraken? No.
We've got to keep a keen
We'll
eye.
eat the Kraken. We'll eat the Kraken for dinner. Like shrimp fra diavolo, one of my favorite dishes.
Oh, okay. All right. And anything just before we do transition to Brian? I know one of the things we could say, just for production value's sake, if you have something that you like to add to the mix, generally the best idea is just to raise your hand, as we can see here on
Yes.
Skype. Unfortunately, a VoIP that will be going by the wayside in just a few months. So I don't know why they've made that decision.
I do have something to share with you.
Okay.
I think I made a very interesting discovery with regard to the Athena lander that landed on the moon. I think it was yesterday. It tipped over like the last one, which makes me very suspicious of that. They've landed 2 landers, this company, and the first one tripped over and landed at an angle, and they claimed that they couldn't show what they wanted to show. And then they did another lander yesterday, and it seems to have tipped over too, which I think is beyond the laws of chance, and I think it's just another excuse for them not to show us what they were seeing on the way down. I was very disappointed that both the Blue Ghost and the IM lander, Athena lander, they used video game animations to simulate the landing. Why couldn't they just put a live camera and let us see the descent like the Chinese did with Chang'e 3 and the videos of Chang'e 2? So I'm a little disappointed. It's a little bit of a jip, but I want to say that Athena took a series of photographs from orbit, and I made a remarkable discovery in analyzing one of the photos that seems to have captured the solar wind and plasma streams. And I'm very confident in sharing this with you because I just had a 1-hour interview with Dr. John Brandenburg, one of our country's foremost plasma physicists. And when I showed him the photographs, he was delighted. He said, I've never seen anything like that.
Is this a follow-up to the interview that you had with him just a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, this was just today because I did some work on some Athena photographs over the last 2 days, and I've discovered an amazing image that's not visible to the ordinary human eye or the camera eye, but when I enhanced the photograph and conducted a few computer enhancements on it, an absolutely beautiful image came out, which I thought to be streams of plasma flowing from the sun onto the moon. And it just seems that Dr. Brandenburg said the satellite must have just captured it at a perfect angle, because he's never seen any photograph like this one. So later on in the show, I'll share it with you.
Sure. Just a quick question comes to mind here. Is Dr. Brandenburg someone of his stature? You would think he could, from time to time, be in contact with the likes of Michio Kaku.
I think he'd be in contact with any of the great physicists of our time.
Pretty high profile.
He was the deputy director of the Clementine mission, U.S. Navy Clementine orbiter, the moon. And I've worked on that for years. And I downloaded the greatest. They did a composite of 22.5 million individual images, which were stitched together. And I made some amazing discoveries working with that.
Right.
So I'm very happy and proud to have Dr. John Brandenburg as a friend.
And just briefly, Clementine, isn't that the one? I believe there was some footage that was put together, allegedly, within the context of Clementine, which seemed to depict a mummified Tibetan princess or something to that effect?
No. That wasn't Clementine. That was a video that was leaked many years ago.
Right.
Call it the lunar Mona Lisa. And apparently there's a real mystery about the moon that involves the Chinese from the very beginning, because I remember as the Apollo 11 was heading there, Houston made a call to Apollo 11, and we thought they were being facetious, but it was, I thought it was actually code. They told Apollo 11, when you get to the moon, please be on the lookout for a Chinese princess. Her name is Chang-O, and she was abducted and taken to the moon a couple of 100 years ago by a tall gray rabbit. So if you see her around, please let us know. And in a very dry tone, one of the Apollo astronauts replied, Roger, Houston, Wilco, basically. If you see her around,
that is incredible.
I'll let you.
So
this video came out many years later, and I said, could they have been talking about that? Could they have been looking for a mummified body that they brought back? And I believe that may be the case.
And who was the rabbit?
Well, the thing, the Chinese lander is called Chang-O, and the rover is called Yutu, Jutu, Jutu.
Oh, yeah.
And that supposedly symbolizes this giant rabbit that took her to the moon. She was involved in Chinese alchemy that was forbidden by the emperor, and she and her husband had concocted a pill that would make them levitate. So the story is that the emperor's guards found out that they were doing this. So she had 2 pills. They were supposed to only take 1. So she took 2 pills, and she started to float. And she floated off, guided by a rabbit named Jutu.
Wow, this is incredible. We'll have to investigate this further, after the show, obviously. So, yeah.
Let me just say this. It's a myth. It's a myth. But Joseph Campbell, in his book, Myths to Live By, related the story of a 6th grader who was in class, and the teacher asked, does anybody here know what a myth is? And little Johnny raised his hand, and she said, Johnny, you know what a myth is? And he said, yes, teacher. A myth is something that's true on the inside, but not on the outside.
That's a great way of putting it. Very succinct and to the point. Sure.
So,
all right.
Looking forward to this.
Yeah, thank you. Just get you to mute out. Obviously, the Morning Star Report. What are the times, just once again, for people's listeners' refreshment? Mondays and Sundays, is it not? Oh, he's muted out, so we can't hear him right now. But via RBN and Revolution Radio. So I appear as co-host. He's gracious enough to have invited me on board 10 p.m. Eastern time, so New York Miami, Toronto, Vancouver, that would be 7 p.m. Brian, who we have here,
Yes.
eagerly, I think it's actually champing at the bit is the actual word.
Yeah.
But
Let me just say,
yeah.
Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern,
Okay.
Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern.
That's right.
Sunday and Monday, A and B. On Sunday, Studio A. On Mondays, it's Studio B.
Okay.
And it's revolution.radio. That's as easy as it can get. So
sure is. Yeah.
That's my plug.
And Robert Morningstar at Substack. That's the main link that we do use, to promote the work that you do, other work that you do online in relation to the live stream. So, Brian, it's been a few years, I guess. We were half-heartedly thinking of maybe getting Panya Basabiku into the mix here, but I'm also looking at the fact that we've got Buddha's birthday coming up, and I believe it's May, so that might be a good opportunity to bounce the idea of having the both of you back, the bad boys of Buddhism, as a tag team duo. Welcome back, and what do you reckon?
Well, happy to be back, Jeff. It's been maybe 2 years since we've been to talk together. Remember, you and I were on with Panabasa, I think, the last time we met. Yeah, so things are going good. I just phoned Panabasa today, but he was out, so I left him a voicemail. But hey, he's kind of created a whole niche on Buddhism on the right, you could say, or bashing the left from a Buddhist view. So he's created a whole niche so I'm glad to have launched Panabasa in the video world. He's a very intelligent ex-Buddhist monk, very intelligent teacher.
Well, we definitely need the likes of both of you clearly to offer some pushback to a counter argument to what would otherwise be completely one-sided interpretation of Buddha Dharma, obviously. So it makes for lively dialogue and food for thought on all fronts. But we're mostly here to talk about your latest project. We can see it there front and center via the slideshow, University Galacticus. Let's hear a little bit about that, but also just a brief bio thumbnail sketch, if we didn't do enough already via the intro, as far as yourself personally and this latest project of yours. Sounds really very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I guess, well, it's my combining my interest in Buddhist cosmology with UFOs and extraterrestrials. I did a video once with a senior Buddhist monk, Ajahn Panabasa in Ontario, on Buddhist cosmology, UFOs, devas, ETs. So Buddhist cosmology has 31 levels of existence, and there's 6 levels of heaven in the central sphere, and then there's the fine material sphere beyond that. So there's lots of room there for extraterrestrials or devas and angels. So I still have my Buddhist worldview, and I kind of combined that interest in extraterrestrials. Yeah, University Galacticus we started at the end of 2022, and part of the philosophy or the idea behind this to prepare people for contact with non-human intelligences, both physical and non-physical, and with the aim to dial down fear of extraterrestrial visitation and interaction, because the media throughout history has promoted fear of ETs, like from 1950s science fiction movies, B movies, or Independence Day. There's this fear narrative. So one of our priorities is to dial down fear in terms of people understanding that there actually is an extraterrestrial presence in the world, and the evidence of UFOs indicates there is some ET presence. So trying to ease the public into this and reduce fear, and also to talk about ideas about what is their agenda, raising awareness that there probably is some extraterrestrial agenda. I focus a lot on that. And also understanding the intention and level of threat and de-escalate concept or conflict from perceived negative species, like some species of reptilians are probably hostile. It seems to be evidence for that. And also one of our objectives is to initiate a cultural exchange project between humanity and extraterrestrial visitors, like promote contact modalities, like, for instance, guided meditations or remote viewing, that kind of thing, astral travel, things like that, to contact with ETs, and to invite experts in various ET-related studies to guide our curriculum. So the idea, it's an online university we're creating with various courses, and it's kind of not a top-down organization, but kind of lateral, like we do projects with other like educational institutions or UFO organizations. And the inspiration for this was actually channeled through a woman, Aspen, in Texas. She channels this entity called Betelgeuse, and we have 3 launch videos which are linked to the website. It's universitygalacticus.org, and you can see she's quite a high spirit that channels through her. Like Aspen says that she doesn't really matter. You know, what matters is the entity channeling through. So I've got a lot of respect for this channel entity, Betelgeuse. So most of the inspiration came from Betelgeuse through Aspen. I'd say I probably contribute less than 20% of the ideas for the inspiration. So I'm thankful for that connection with Aspen.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that sounds a lot. When I first read it, it struck me as sounding so much like Beetlejuice, which I don't know if I think that's an actual thing, both within a pop cultural context and I think a wider cosmic galactic, environment or way of things are mapped out. Isn't there something in some distant galaxy? A planet?
Well, Betelgeuse, the way she describes it, it's the star in the constellation Orion, the top left star. It's a red giant, like a huge kind of superstar. She says the entity Betelgeuse is on the 7th or 8th dimension. They're part of what's called the stellar engines of transformation, and the entity takes on the third dimensional identity of the actual star, Betelgeuse, which is red supergiant, and channels from there to Aspen in Texas, which is an amazing concept of things I wouldn't even thought of in terms of channeling this entity. So they have a very broad sense of these stellar engines of transformation, reach out across the galaxy, this higher dimension.
And I think speaking, so it is a very like Beetlejuice, which would, I believe, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy referenced. If memory serves, I'm not sure if either you or Robert or Sonia Galactic I see is out there presently. She's been feeling a little under the weather as of late, unfortunately. She's come on board recently, not only as our merchandise director, but also co-producer, helping to book a growing number of guests in the feature capacity. So, she might have some take on this as well, too. But are you aware of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? You of course heard of Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah, I remember that from the 1970s. I think the answer to the universe was 42.
So yeah,
Beetlejuice is also a movie. There's a movie I think in the 1980s, called Beetlejuice. So that's a totally different thing.
Right.
And Aspen clarifies that.
That's kind of that's the way that a lot of times Hollywood operates. They take certain concepts and ideas and symbols, and subvert them, warp them. ISIS is a good example. The swastika is another one. Not that we want to get you started on that, that whole, but it's a great symbol, a very powerful one that, actually you and I probably would have a difference of opinion on that. Powerful symbol, clearly, and that's why it has been used down through history and whatnot. But ISIS is another example that, turning things on their head in almost like a black magic sense. So Beetlejuice, do you think, was there and there was a little guy that appeared on the Howard Stern show as well. I'm not sure if you know of him or not, the little dwarf guy named Beetlejuice too. There's his nickname. So let's hear more about Beetlejuice itself.
Hold on a second,
okay.
Jeffy.
Go ahead.
I'd like to say something about Beetlejuice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Or Beetlejuice, depending on how you pronounce it.
She pronounced it Beetlejuice to distinguish it from Beetlejuice. Yeah.
Beetlejuice, the German Beetlejuice. Anyway, I've been looking at that star for over 40 years through telescopes. Oh. And in 1999, I had a shocker. From 1984 through 1989, every year I was watching it with my friend from a top of a 24-story building here in New York. We did our amateur astronomy on top of the Windermere Chateau on 92nd Street and West End Avenue. Then in 1999, we had a rooftop party on another building, 12 stories high. And I said to my friend, you know what? I'll bring my telescope. So I set up the telescope, and when I looked through the telescope at Orion and I saw Betelgeuse, I was shocked. It had always been a bright red dot, a red giant. but all of a sudden it had a golden glow around it. And I said to myself, my God, it looks like it went supernova. And about 2 months later, NASA came out with a statement that Betelgeuse had begun to go through a process on the way to supernova. And it was a very shocking thing to see. The other thing that I had the privilege to see, and it was a sad one, I had been watching the Great Red Spot on Jupiter again all those years until, about 5-6 years ago, it was announced that the Great Red Spot had disappeared. And I looked through the telescope and, oh my God, it was gone. It was shocking to me. And I said, oh my God, I may be one of the last human beings to see the Great Red Spot. But over time, it reemerged. And the theory is that the SL9, Shoemaker-Levy 9 comet impact had disrupted the atmosphere so badly that it made the Great Red Spot disappear. But the atmosphere on Jupiter has settled down and the Great Red Spot is back.
Big shout out to Psycho Fire and Asuka. Asuka, I was just thinking of you, actually. It's interesting. I'm not, perhaps, hopefully auspicious, that you've made an appearance here, actually. She is someone who spent a lot of time contributing to the Belgab community, I guess, the now essentially, it seems defunct. It's kind of frozen in time, more or less. But, and there's more of a story to than what I've disclosed here, just in that brief, encapsulament or point essentially that was made regarding her and her backstory. There is other than to say, there's an Art Bell, a deeper, I suspect, Art Bell connection to the wider picture than what most people are aware. But that's where I'll leave it, in a good way too, in a good way. So, but yeah, so all right. Now, I'm not sure if they have any. We're just soliciting thoughts, comments, and questions via the Peanut Gallery here at present, of course. But my gosh, I have to share with you. Now's as good a time as any, I suppose, if it's all right with both of you.
Yeah, sure.
Well, this is profound. I'm not sure, because you mentioned astral travel, the astral realm, which I'm not overly familiar with, actually. So it'd be great if you could maybe, because you've studied this extensively, Brian, throughout the years, obviously within the Buddhist context and beyond. But I had a dream just a couple nights ago, actually, regarding the Vril. I was actually taken up into one of their craft.
Cool.
Yeah. It was the Vril. What is it? The black sun symbol. That I think kind of it's swastika partly in nature, I suppose one could say. And that's what actually a lot of people don't know. It's an ancient Aryan sun symbol. That's how the story goes. So, but yeah, the Vril and the black sun taken up. A little intimidated at first, but I got up there and the vibe was fine. It was cool, and I met actually some of those long-haired beauties, and nothing. Things didn't go. Nothing on an overtly erotic or sexual nature, unfortunately, but. Or maybe, who knows, there could be a darker side to all that too. There's a reason the French, the term for orgasm is le petit mort, the little death. So, and as a Buddhist, especially anyone has studied Eastern philosophy knows that the leading cause of death is birth. So I think the French have got it right in that sense. But they were beautiful, wonderful, and the vibe was great. And I'm just so undisciplined and lazy. I don't know if either of you keep a dream journal. Brian, maybe you've done this throughout the years, but it was I kind of wandered. I don't know if it was Betelgeuse or I'm going to call it Beetlejuice for now, at least. But the vibe was cool on the planet itself, the land where I was, after exploring the craft to some extent. So have you ever had something like that? My dad is an experiencer himself, but in a physical actual material sense. I don't know if I've ever shared that blog with you. Robert's aware of this whole story, but I'll do this after the show wraps up. Mostly we're here to hear from you directly. But what of the astral realm? What of dreams? And what would you say? What would the significance of what I experienced, or what would that be exactly?
Yeah, some dreams might be a real experience, and it's perceived as a dream. Certainly, that happens a lot with alien contact. People talk about this powerful dream they had when they were 5 years old. Well, most people don't remember a dream for 5 minutes. Why would they remember that? So often that could be contact. So like, it's hard to tell. Like if you had a dream like that, it might have been a dream, or maybe you're astral traveling. Many people think people astral travel every night. I had one successful astral traveling when I was 16 years old. I read Robert Monroe's book on journeys out of the body.
Oh, right.
Really,
sure.
And I came out of my body, and I saw myself on the bed, and I tried to turn on the light. So I tried to flick on the light with my finger, but my finger went through the switch, of course, since I was in my astral body. I was getting frustrated like this. And then I went back into my body. So, but I wasn't that lucid at the time.
Incredible.
So at least that convinced me of that. But the Buddha, he did sort of commend his monks who had various magical powers. Like it was okay to do that. It's not wrong to do that. But as someone getting more enlightened or progressing on the path of enlightenment, they could, receive abilities or develop abilities like telepathy, astral travel, things like that. And the Buddha did that himself. Like he would go up to the higher heavens in his astral body and teach the devas, angels there. So it's definitely part of Buddhism, Buddhist path, and Buddhist cosmology.
Right, but the erotic end of things is, for a monk, definitely not something that they want to be pursuing or otherwise fueling.
Yeah, it's in their precepts and not allowed to have sex with devas. Like a monk could go out of his body and have sex with devas. And of course, deva sex is much better than human sex. And Buddha's very clear about that. So for a monk, it's definitely a no-no. You can't do that in your body or in your astral body.
Okay.
A lay Buddhist could do it if they wanted.
I guess that's why they're called lay Buddhists. It makes total sense now, doesn't it? So, yeah. Robert, I don't know if you want to jump in there or not.
They're a very interesting conversation. I'm right with you and I'm really glad that Brian mentioned Robert A. Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body.
Yeah.
I read that in 1975. It became a manual for me teaching remote viewing, because astral projection, astral travel is remote viewing. And as far as having sex with devas are concerned, maybe it's forbidden to Buddhists, but it's not to Taoists. And I've had my share of those experiences, and came away better for it, I would say.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it helps to raise the vibration, I guess, presumably.
Well, in Taoism, you specifically want to elevate that energy, but you conserve it. You conserve it and build it up, and that becomes the basis of the spirit body. The theory is that raw sexual energy from Eros is Jing. And you take the Jing, raise it to the Dantian, the center below your navel, and there you boil it and turn it into Qi. And then the Qi circulates through the body osmotically and starts to build up the spirit body. And so people have a little trouble understanding that. But I say to you, if you imagine your body made of marbles, composed of marbles, you know that when you join marbles together, there's always that space that looks like a jack between them. So the idea is that you suffuse the body with this spiritual energy, the Shen, that comes from the Qi, and then the Shen enters all of that space between the marbles, if you use that metaphor. And then when death comes, all the marbles fall away, but the space between the marbles has now been reconstituted with spirit or Shen. So, and I recommend Robert Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body to everyone. And I'm sure that Brian was as surprised as I was to come to the end of the book and hear Robert Monroe start to say that after all the years of his experiences, he had come to the conclusion that there was, that UFOs were real, that alien entities cohabitate with us in the solar system, and that they do reach out to us. And sometimes take us. It's a wonderful book.
On the astral realm, or the
It changed
astral
my life.
through the astral approach. Is that right? With the ET astral connection, is that what you're saying that he wrote about? That he ended his book on that note?
Yeah, out of the blue.
How about
He didn't
that?
mention aliens or anything. And then the last chapter, he sums up what he had realized after all his experiences in the astral realm.
But so we're talking. But Mr. Robert Monroe, who's now presumably, I think he's deceased. He'd be really old.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
right. But OBEs. But didn't he also write extensively on NDEs?
No, I think that was someone else.
Okay. Okay, all right. So, all right. Well, I'm not sure where exactly you like to take the. We didn't really get much into University Galacticus. So if you could maybe, because you're now, I'm not sure if, I guess, self-appointed dean. You're sitting or serving as dean. I know you've got on your BitChute channel a lot of talks with friends and colleagues and fellow. I'm not sure if you're in the field, the category of experiencer per se, but you've got some really amazing stories, obviously, of the paranormal type. But you host panels quite frequently, is what it seems. So there's this wide dialogue that's emerging, and about the congressional testimony, nothing of which we're hearing here in Korea whatsoever. So if anything breaks in a big way, they're going to be so caught off guard, frankly, most of the people here in Korea, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I could say it was Betelgeuse who appointed me as the dean of University Galacticus. It wasn't my idea. Okay. So I really want to point. Well, it's kind of it's a website, a series of videos, and it's developing. The idea is to bring in more people, but yeah, I guess so. It was Betelgeuse that appointed me as dean. Like it was their idea, if you want to refer to them in the plural. But one of the things I've been working on in terms of our videos, like I have a meetup group. We're meeting actually tomorrow. It's called Preparing for ET Contact. This is where we make a lot of the videos with members. Like we get a dozen on Zoom, or sometimes I'll interview people one-on-one. But one of the things we're focusing on is what is the ET agenda for human advancement? And guess we're with a particular school of thought thinking that really what's going on is the ETs are hybridizing humanity to be hybrids of ETs and them. This is a process that's probably been going on since 1800s. So they're
longer than that, I bet you. I suspect longer than that.
Well, I could quote, actually, we have a book here for the purpose of the video. I got David Jacobs.
Oh, yeah.
90s.
Yeah, I was good. Thank you. I was going to bring him up. Thank you.
His view of it was, if this had been going on, say, since the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago, within a few centuries, all of humanity would have been hybridized. But they estimate maybe 6% of the world's population has been like abducted or taken. So they kind of trace it back in time to the mid 1800s or late 1800s when this particular process started. But they may have been here like 40,000 years ago with the Neanderthals. They may have decided, well, we need to make an upgrade to Homo sapiens sapiens from Neanderthals. Maybe they came then, and now they're coming back. So it seems we're in the midst of a hybridation process. So I think this is what the whole UFO phenomenon is about. So a lot of people disagree with that, or a lot of people feel, well, we are being hybridized, but this is a terrible thing. But I think it's a good thing. I think they want the next sort of brand of human to be more telepathic. Like that'll be a hallmark. Like the ETs are all telepathic. So we'll have a species of humanity that's telepathic, more spiritually oriented, and also have a consciousness in tune with higher dimensions called quantum dimensional consciousness. Like the way, say, if someone could astral travel to the higher realms, that would be like a state of consciousness where the next human being will actually have a mind in tune with these higher dimensions and be telepathic. So the difference could be as big as from a human to an ape. So that's a school of thought within the UFO community, but it's a very disparate UFO community. I had an email just this week with L.A. Marzulli. He's the most famous Christian. To him, it's all demonic. It's all demonic. It's not Jesus, therefore it must be demonic. So there's that school of thought as well.
Marzulli actually covered the Afghan Giants of Kandahar incident, of which we, both Robert and I believe, have inside knowledge of as to who one of the people that was there, actual boots on the ground witnessing the whole affair. So that, and you know, we hear so often about these, I guess, Nephilim and others. You really got to wonder, the giants of old that looked upon the females of this human species, found them to be fair and comely. That's right.
Yeah, it's probably true. Yeah.
So, but this is, and then Carl Jung, I was going to bounce that off of you, the name, and whether you've read his book. There's an audiobook version of the Flying Saucers. I'm not sure the exact title. Yeah, Robert and I had a good talk.
I did a video on that. Yeah.
Flying Saucers.
I read the book, did a review.
And what?
I think it's called The Flying Saucers, a Modern Myth.
Okay, there you go. That's right. And it was his last. We had a slight.
Yes.
You actually. It was great. You actually apologized, and I was like, wow, this. You know, not even Trump has ever apologized. Robert, checkmark. You see, he was, you know, so that's great. Good. You know.
But to get a course correction, and we were off by a couple of years.
Yeah,
said that Mysterium Conjunctionis, I thought was his last book, because that's what I had read. But I was disappointed by Flying Saucers, Modern Myth. Because
me too. I panned it in my video.
Gatekeeping on his part, then perhaps. What do you think?
I thought so.
Limited hangout.
Maybe. I thought he didn't understand. He thought some manifestation of the collective unconscious was meant, like he was kind of dismissive of the idea, but he admitted that there were radar returns of flying saucers, you know, from the ground and from the air. So he had to admit that this must be something real. But he kind of thought of some manifestation of collective unconscious, and he didn't really accept it as real ET extraterrestrial phenomena. So I think he was basically wrong about UFOs. But that was, I think, 1958 when he wrote it. I guess they didn't know so much then as we know now. If he's around today, he might have a more refined view, I guess.
So in your mind, Brian?
Right about gatekeeping. I think, but what he did confirm was astral projection and premonitory dreams. Remember the scene where he talked about a woman who came in and told him that she was having a dream about this beetle that was, you know, making noise in her dreams, and he thought, that's a fun.
The scarab.
And then he heard a noise on the window, and he went over to the window, and there was this beetle tapping on the window.
The same one that she just described.
I see, similar to the one she described. So I thought he was reaffirming the validity of precognitive dreams
and synchronistic
astral projection and synchronicity, of course.
So, all right. Well, but physical and what's the opposite being, like non-material, I suppose, we're looking at both angles and both aspects to this phenomenon then.
I think the majority of contact is now non-physical. Like there's the free study, they interviewed like 4,350 experiencers, and the majority of contact, like in their astral body or psychically, the physical contact was less than half.
How about Project Bluebeam?
Well, I mean, that's the idea of a fake alien invasion, right? It's discussed by Werner von Braun in the 70s. Well, it's possible. It's been 50 years. Nothing's happened yet. I mean, they're not generating fear. Obviously, in the media now, they're not generating a lot of fear, but it might be something they have in their back pocket they might want to pull out later.
Sure.
But this time it's not apparent.
Did you follow the recent UFO drone flap that ran for what, like nearly a month, I guess? Just a short while back. And throughout the West, largely, is what it seemed. Nothing here in Korea that I was made aware of, so... What are your thoughts?
Well, unless Robert wants to go, I think it's something genuine there, because there's like car-size drones that stay up for like 5 hours or 6 hours longer than normal drones, and some are like orbs of light, and some move very fast and erratically. So I think some might be real orbs, but I think there's a real ET presence there, and I don't think it stopped. It started in December. I think it's still going on. The media is probably distracting us or getting us not to talk about it so much, but I think it's never really been explained. And, you know, Trump's press secretary, Karen Levitt, said, they have FAA approval. You know, we know what they are. Don't worry about it. It's just drones, but they don't really know what it is, or they're not admitting what it is.
A lot of those, like a TR-3B is all I can really think. The triangular shaped craft with the lights, would those not have been some of what were reported and even, I guess, videoed with people's hand phones, cell phones, and so forth?
I don't know. Triangular. Were they
very similar.
Somewhere, some triangles were, but it was from coast to coast. I got a call at 2:00 in the morning from a friend of mine, Colonel Tom Lane, U.S. Army. And he called me, he's a very close friend, and he said, "It's a UFO hovering over my house. I'm talking to it right now." And he sent me videos, and he would tell it to move, and it moved, and he'd tell it to change color, and it changed color. And then subsequently, he had some visitations in his house that he wrote to me about. And so it is real. I believe that there was a lot of UFO activities, and then they flooded the area with drones to confuse everyone.
Yeah, that's my theory as well. Yeah, to cover it up. Yeah.
Okay.
The real UFOs were plasma ships, orbs. And I captured a video and went frame by frame. And when you see the video, you don't see the metamorphosis, the change. Every 30th of a second, this plasma orb was changing configuration, let's call it. But they seem to be extremely intelligent. And I wonder if Brian has studied the work of Chris Bledsoe, who's written
The Mind of God, UFO God's book.
Right. Go to you.
He can calm them down. He can summon them, and they'll come down. Right.
There was something big that just came out about him in the last couple of days too. Some dirt, apparently. Did anyone follow up on that story? There's some scandal breaking, I believe, surrounding him. So we'll just set that aside.
I don't want to hear any dirt, because that's a way of discrediting somebody.
Look at Billy Carson, though, recently as an example. Someone who really, you have on the one side Billy Carson, the green emeralds of Thoth, and he's purporting to be an expert. And he's very knowledgeable, of course. But on the other side, you had that Canadian-born biblical scholar, and he seemed to really, he really showed that Billy was, making a few claims that proved not to be all that true or accurate. And
he said Jesus went to Tibet to learn,
there was no Tibetan Buddhism during the time of Christ.
There wasn't.
I really annoys. Yeah, we're both annoyed every time we hear people talk.
He learned Reiki in Tibet. That's ridiculous.
Well, that might have been there. But it was Bun.
Bun, yes.
Bun. Yeah, you're right.
That's right.
Yeah, I scoured the world in 2000. I scoured the whole world to find the only book on Bun.
Oh my God!
And it was published in India. It's a fascinating story, and the swastika was flying over Lhasa 1,000 years before it flew over Berlin.
That's right.
Wow.
It was a pyramidal power structure, and every 7 years, every tribe in Tibet had to send a delegation to make obeisance and pledge their fealty to the Dalai Lama, and it required the sacrifice of every 10th man in a human sacrifice to the Dalai Lama in a show of fealty, loyalty, and obeisance. And that migrated into modern-day Tibetan Buddhism, which is directly connected to Shinto. Shinto does not come from China. Shinto has a direct connection, a lineage with Tibetan Buddhism.
Mm-hmm. That decimation business, the human sacrifice, I was not aware of until you drew that to our attention, Robert. So I'm thankful for that. I'm still, it leaves kind of me the ball in my responsibility to further investigate. Clearly,
yeah.
So
it kept happening. It kept happening into the 20th century when the communists hijacked the religion of the Mongolian tribes. They wanted to convince them that their legend of Shambhala was being fulfilled by the communist revolution in Moscow.
That's a smart approach.
Yeah, smart approach. There's a marvelous book that I recommend to everyone. It's called Red Shambhala by Andrei Nemensky.
Mm-hmm.
Just type in Red Shambhala into Amazon. You'll find it. I had the pleasure of meeting the author and talking to him about it. So the basis is that communism sought to hijack religions and to turn their believers into acolytes of communism by claiming that communism was the fulfillment of their end times prophecies.
Yeah, the Dalai Lama met with Mao in the 50s, and he was getting a bit convinced, well, maybe this will be good for Tibet, you know?
Right.
And Mao was kind of persuading him.
The Dalai Lama, I believe, even to this day, still is a self-professed Marxist. That's what he on the record. Politically, that's where he stands.
I think he's a globalist, so the globalists have got him. So I'm not
exactly right. Exactly. So
now, William.
I have a question. I have a question.
Okay.
For Brian.
Right.
Since you are a former Buddhist monk, and you mentioned devas, and there's something that happened at Roswell that few people know about, and it has to do with a telegram that General Ramey was holding in his hand while exploring the debris. If you let me share screen, it's very short. I want to share
the one that they zoomed up on. Yeah, they saw the small fine print.
David
have a picture of it. Yeah.
David Rudiak was a computer expert, and in 1995 or 96, he blew up. Let me share the screen because I have a couple.
While you're doing that, we got a couple new friends to the show. Martin Taylor out of the UK, actually. He's an early morning kind of person, and so he's beat cancer, actually, is what he tells us as well. He's a beautiful guy. Just can't say enough good things about him. The vibe that he conveys and transmits. So great to have you back in the house and reconnecting with us here, Martin. Karma Love as well too, saying great night, guys. It's a great show. Been talking about this stuff a lot with her family lately. While Martin adds to it that rather cynical, jaded eye. The UFO phenomenon waters are so muddled now with fake info, psyop grifters with zero evidence. I'm done with it. I can't believe it anymore. So, and he's got a great point there, Brian, now let's... Robert, are you ready, or should we let Brian?
Can you see my screen?
Okay, hang on.
I see it.
we got to bring it up via this end though too. So, and then Brian, let's have you respond to this Martin's last comment, just the cynical sort of jaded eye regarding the world of ufology.
Well, yeah, I think there's grifters, and of course, there's government disinfo agents who, they feel it's their job and they're loyal to the country to have disinfo to make disclosure go slower. And then there's grifters and people like Corey Good, who admitted that he just made it all up. I like him because
a lot of money too. They love a lot of money that he was presented with from just right out of the blue.
Yeah, and he said the stocks of Gaia TV went up a lot during it's like from 2015 to 5 years or so. He's making these videos.
Yeah. I never bought his stories, to be honest with you. There was something evasive about his answers. But if you can, I'd like to share this with you. It's
Go ahead.
It relates directly to what Brian.
Excellent.
Okay, so let me take you quickly through this. And Brian, you might. I don't know if you were on the list. This is one of those emails that I sent to Jack Sarfati and our friends. Okay, Roswell code word for aliens, Daiwas and Daityas. And I came across this word Daiwas from this telegram that you see in General Ramey's hand. So our friend David Rudiak had really advanced computer technology in the 1990s, 95, 96, 97. He zoomed in on this telegram and other pictures of it, and he was able to capture words from it, and it related to a specific term that was used. Let me just read this through. This report has to do with the Roswell UFO crash and the telex telegram that General Roger Ramey was holding in his hands during the U.S. Army's weather balloon wreckage fake news press conference with General Ramey and Captain Jesse Marcel, held on July 8th, 1947. During the mid-1990s, using computer graphics enhancement, our friend David Rudiak was able to make some of the lines in the telegram in General Ramey's hand legible. The Army Air Force G2, that was the intelligence section, used a strange word for the aliens, a very unusual word, which I did not understand except to think to myself, that sounds like the Hindu language. Mm-hmm. The weird words in the telegram was dawa, singular, or daiwas, plural. And I wondered why the U.S. Air Force would use a Hindu code word to describe extraterrestrial alien creatures. I have a link here, a video that revealed to me the missing word and its meaning. The word that the U.S. Air Force G2 analyst used in 1947, Daiwas, was a simpler way of writing a more complex Hindu word in English. The actual word is Daityas, D-A-I-T-Y-A-S. Its meaning is explained in these few sentences quoted from the documentary that I was writing to Robert Stanley that you sent me. Hindu mythology or local recorded history says that Ellora was built by Alala, Alvala being the modern spelling. Alula Alvala is a deity which Hindu mythology says are cosmic beings. Devas are higher level angels, Asuras are fallen angels, and Daityas are somewhere in between. Some are good and some aren't. We're told that Daityas overran the earth and had to be hunted down and eradicated by the higher-ups under the command of Vishnu. We find the same in other traditions. In Islam, for example, it says that the world pre-flood was overrun by tribes of jinn. The flood was meant to get rid of them. They weren't devas. They were semi-fallen angels. Daiwas equals Daityas equals semi-fallen angels. MJ13 is my code name in ufology. That's it. So you mentioned devas, and there's this other element that I didn't know until last year when that came out. So I'll give you this documentary. It's really worth, I'll put it in the chat.
Good stuff. Brian,
thank you.
Any response to that, or?
Well, yeah, that's fascinating. I think I'm familiar with Buddhist cosmology. So it's interesting. In 1947, the American military were probably familiar with Hindu cosmology of the Devas. I guess it would make sense that they would study that, because even in ancient Hinduism, they describe when you go inside, a Vimana, which is like UFO.
Right.
Sometimes it looks much bigger on the inside than it does on the outside.
Mana.
Brian, I think I know who was responsible for the use of that language. None other than J. Robert Oppenheimer. Yeah. Remember what he said when he said the atom bomb?
Einstein.
Yeah, he quoted the Bhagavad Gita, I am the destroyer of worlds.
He was steeped in Hindu mythology, Oriental studies, and I don't know if you got my message. Again, I don't know if you were on the list, but I discovered a letter drafted in June 1947, a month before the Roswell crash, which proves that the U.S. government was in contact with extraterrestrials. And in this letter, Einstein and Oppenheimer go through different processes for possible processes for integrating into human culture a celestial race, an EBEs, a celestial race, that was their term in 47, that had decided to settle on planet Earth. So they went through all of the juridical possibilities and individual treaties with nations, a general treaty through the United Nations, or secret treaties, and they recommended the U.S. sign a secret treaty with the extraterrestrials, forbade the divulging of their existence or their interaction with the U.S. government. But the key thing is Einstein and Oppenheimer believed that the ETs of 1947 were the return of the Elohim. And so they embraced them as the return of their gods according to Judaism. And they called Jewish. That's right. And they called for the establishment of a third covenant with these extraterrestrials, but to keep it secret from the world public, to give them settlement rights, ranging rights, which is what I describe as looking for resources, trading resources. And the resources are water, energy, and human resources.
People, mashiketa, as the Koreans say. Very delicious. So,
back to Brian.
Well, and that's the thing, too. There's so much we could get into here. First of all, did either of you see the starting with Brian, of course, he is the featured guest of the week.
Oppenheimer.
What are your thoughts? Yeah. What's your take on what Hollywood had to produce?
I assume they're trying to make it really sympathetic, what a great guy he was. But I mean, I I don't think of him as a great guy. I guess it was a good 2.5 hours to study a bit of history. Yeah, the atomic bomb. I don't think it was a good idea to create the atomic bomb. So
yeah, well, and they did the same thing like with Kinsey. I haven't seen the movie Oppenheimer or Kinsey, but my understanding is isn't it known as lionizing, where they just really glowing terms. That's how they're
and how he's such a peacenik afterwards into the 1960s and all of this, which may be true, but yeah, I think they're lionizing him.
Okay, now the Treaty of Grenada, I believe, is what followed up in 1953. Robert, maybe you can.
1954.
So Oppenheimer and Einstein, they got together in, what did you say? 45?
47.
47, June 1947.
Okay.
That's
I think that's true.
Crash happened in July.
And
so they were already in contact and dealing with this problem of celestial race that decided. They didn't ask. He says, what are we going to do with a celestial race that has decided to settle on planet Earth? So that's, Brian, I'll share the letter with you. We have emailed out, so I can share that with you.
But I've read that before. I think that's a real letter, yeah.
Well, and weren't both Oppenheimer and Einstein in communication with the president at the time? Both Truman and later Eisenhower, who during the course of the signing, supposedly, of this Treaty of Grenada with the ETs, that he disappeared for some time, where even there were reports, I guess, of him having passed away. I
think that's when he met with the ETs.
That's right.
February 54 when he met with them in California. I think it was Holloman Air Force Base.
Yeah. There were two meetings. Holloman and Kirtland, when they signed the treaty, and it's Grenada. Really weird name.
Grenada. So I don't. Yeah.
G-R-E-A-D-A.
Yeah. Like Grenada without the N is what I told. Just I have problems with names sometimes. Oh, geez. Give it to Greada. What? Greada. Do I have it right?
Yes, Greada.
Thank God. And it was 54.
1954.
Okay. Now, but here's another, what I've heard as well. This might be in courtesy of the late, great Jim Mars as well. Where this first was drawn to our attention, but there was a proposal to work with the Nordics, supposedly, is how it was put out, and this could be in his Rule by Secrecy book or one of the others that he published, but an working agreement similar to what Robert outlined earlier, with the exchange of technology in return for grazing rights, I guess, maybe, but a more benign, sort of benevolent approach and philosophy. Although what happened in the end was that the U.S. government, and I'm not sure, they've probably approached all governments around the world, presumably not just the U.S., but Eisenhower decided to go with the more, how would you describe it, Robert, and then Brian, of course, too? Because the way I look at it is like with what was the book that you just had earlier? Why is his name?
The Threat.
By David Jacobs. Yes, correct.
Right.
So and then Grant Cameron, his way of looking at things is very neutral almost. It's his consciousness, it's like neither good nor bad. It's like, okay, but there are people, these experiencers, who do have stories of undergoing severe trauma, really is what they're left with. It's not always a really heavenly, endeavor, when you have these encounters or firsthand direct experiences. So, Brian, why don't you respond to that, if you would, first?
Yeah, I would say it's sure some people are definitely traumatized.
Right.
Certainly the first time they're taken by aliens, but usually over time, over the years or decades, they realize they're not being hurt. They're developing a relationship. And the free study, I've had the book Beyond UFOs here, like over 80% were asked or stated that if they could stop the contacts, they wouldn't want to do it. They want to keep it going. So most people have actually recorded positive contacts, even if at first they're quite shocked or scared. So they may have a good relationship, even though they're scared once on the craft. You know, their memories are suppressed, but they may have a good relationship with the ETs, even if they're scared.
Now,
so most people would rather keep it going.
Okay, now you yourself, there's two things here. You yourself, but also the people that you are in contact with, you know, on a semi-regular basis with the work you've been doing in conjunction with University Galacticus and beyond. But with, you know, their stories, I'd be quite interested in hearing a few of the testimonies that what they have to share. But yourself as well, you've seen certain things that you can't really describe as far as potential craft is concerned, but you've never been abducted or anything to that degree.
No, I've just had one sighting. It was May 28th, 2009. I remember, just a small object, 11:30 at night, right here in Vancouver. Just went by. I thought it maybe was just a 2-foot sphere, small metallic object, no light, no sound, very close, so like maybe 150 feet up, maybe within 200 feet close by. So nothing too dramatic, you know, just that. I've never had any contact that I'm aware of. You know?
Now, but
more of a researcher, yeah.
But I would be willing to bet that you do feel you maintain within the realm of consciousness, there's a relationship there potentially where.
Yeah. In fact, when I saw that one, it was 6 days before I founded my Vancouver UFO meetup group. It was on June 3rd, 2009. We had our first meeting. It was an instant success. We had 13 people. We had regular meetings. So it was almost like a signal. They noticed me, and I was founding this UFO community in Vancouver.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, so that I described this with Grant Cameron. He said, well, if you've seen a UFO, you're probably part of the game. So the timing seems meaningful.
Sure. So there we go. Robert, anything that you'd like to add, perhaps just for clarification's sake, just your hot take?
Yes, it's just very timely. This afternoon, I had a conversation with a lady who in 1963, she was 16 years old, and she and her friend were abducted by the praying mantids, and she was really spooked. What can you say? She had 8 hours of missing time, and she also described remembering that she was in the car with her friend, and all of a sudden the car was engulfed in flames and it was rising. And I instantly said to her, "That's plasma." She said, "I couldn't touch the doors because they were so hot." And then I passed out, and then they found themselves back, but the car was in a different place. The door to the car was open, and they had lost 8 hours. Amazing. And I have a lot of that kind of history. Events in Iran around the same time that the F4 incident happened in 1979. A British doctor and an Iranian friend went on a pilgrimage to this holy mountain in the Erebus Mountains. And during the night, they were in this cabin that the government had put up for pilgrims. And they heard these footsteps, and these 8 men walked in, black from head to foot, with their faces covered and big almond oval eyes that wrapped around. And there were not a word was spoken between them. And they just knew, "You're coming with us." So they marched them out, and they said that they were walking through the darkness and they could hear rocks and pebbles and sticks under their feet. And all of a sudden they felt like they were walking on a Persian carpet, Persian rug. They went to a big window and they could see everything outside at night through this window. Then they saw the earth drop away, and they claimed that they saw Greece, Yugoslavia, Paris, and London all on the same night, and then they were put back. They woke up on the road below the mountain. And 75 feet away, their car was in the road where they had left it on the mountain. They got into the car and drove back into Tehran, and they heard the report of the F4 incident, which is when there was a UFO over Tehran and near the airport, and they scrambled 2 F4 Phantom jets to intercept them. And I actually met the pilot who flew this flight. He locked on his missiles on the UFO, and instantly all of his instruments failed. His radio failed, his navigation, the engine kept running, but he saw a white light come out of the UFO heading toward him, and he thought it was a missile that was fired at him. When he turned away, the white UFO went back to the mothership and merged with it, and he saw the mothership descend to the ground, and he noticed where it was. I told him the story about the doctor and the Iranian friend. They were driving back into Tehran. They thought it was the next day. They turned on the radio and they realized they had lost 2 days of time. So I told him about this incident in the Airbuz Mountains. And when I told General Parvez Jafari, he was the head assistant head chief of staff of the Iranian Air Force. He lit up and he said to me, you know, where I saw the UFO land, it was near the Airbuz Mountains. And I got a plane, I got a helicopter the next morning, and I went to the site where it landed. It was near this place. So there is corroboration. This is what I do. I correlate a sighting with a UFO experience that people may have had, and this brings the information together. So a lot of people who are listening, don't doubt your own experiences, folks. Don't believe that you're crazy. This is a natural part of life. They've been around since time immemorial. When they appeared to people in the Middle Ages, they would say, ooh, I'm the devil, you know, or I'm Saint somebody, you know? So they are able to read your belief system. And I had this happen to me. An alien intruder read everything that I believed, everything I knew, everything I'd experienced, and I could feel it going through me, reading me like a book, I said then, but I would say reading me like we search a hard drive. And when he got it, he tried to convince me that I was having a dream and that he was my girlfriend's evil shadow. And he began a metamorphosis. He began a shape-shifting. He said, I'm your girlfriend's evil shadow. You're having a dream. He said, see, and his hair, he was an ugly reptilian little creature, like a chupacabra. He grew hair and he started to change color his forehead into a facsimile of my girlfriend. And I knew he was hijacking my optic lobe. And I said, stop. And I commanded him, stop. And I said to him, I know what you've done. You've read everything I know, everything I believe. You know, I'm a psychologist, I'm a Jungian, and I know the nature of the collective unconscious and the nature of the shadow. And thereby you have given us a way of extricating ourselves from this situation in which neither one of us wants to be involved. But you're not going to convince me you're my girlfriend's evil shadow. You understand that? How you dress? From Puerto Rico. From Puerto Rico. I went to Puerto Rico 2 weeks before, and I was in the forest, and I did Tai Chi in the forest, and I felt like I was being watched. There was not a sound of an animal. There wasn't the air was still. And we'd driven 2.5 hours to get into the rainforest. And after I did my Tai Chi form of 25 minutes, my friend said, Tom said, hey, man, let's get out of here. I don't like this place. And we drove another 2.5 hours. And then 2 weeks later on Fire Island in Labor Day weekend of 1978, I had this face-to-face encounter with a little creepy 3.5 foot tall reptilian-looking creature that had a face that looked like a bat, no neck, and it had 3 horn spikes on its head. And I'm convinced that that thing was a chupacabra. So
this is in real waking life too. This was not a dream.
Real waking life. Not only that, you know, I caught it. It stirred me. It woke up. It woke me up, and when it saw me, it said, "You see me?" And I said, "Yeah, I see you." Mentally, telepathy. He goes, "This is not allowed." I said, "Allowed by whom?"
Yeah.
I belong here. I'm in my bed. And he said, "But this is not allowed." And I said to myself, wow, this guy's in real trouble. He woke me up. He's in trouble with somebody. Because you say allowed, that implies a hierarchy and permissions and restrictions. And then he got frantic. And he changed. He was really broken up. Then he changed his mental state. And he looked at me. And he gave me a really malefic look. And he went like this. you're scared. And he showed me a claw like that, like giving me the finger, but this way with the claw. And he said, you're scared. I clenched my fist. And he projected a thought form into my mind that he was going to claw my arm and cut it open. And I looked and I saw a wound that would have festered, because this thing looked sick. It had bloodshot yellow eyes, and it looked bacterial. I said, no. And my angel, that's my inner voice, said to me, Robert, don't tangle with this thing. If you tangle with it, it's going to be like wrestling with a little leopard. So I changed my fist from a finger and I pointed to him. And he said, you're scared. And I went, yeah, I'm scared, but you're more scared of me than I am of you, because I'm in the right. I'm in my bed. I belong here. You're the one that doesn't belong here. And that's when he gathered himself, looked at me, and he pulsed something that hit me right in the forehead. And I could felt it in my spinal column and my nerves and my muscles. I said, oh my God, this thing's reading me like a book. And then suddenly this magnetism, I would call it, exited my body. And he said that, listen, we're not really here. I'm mimicking the body language, creepy little weird alien body language. Listen, I'm not really here. You're having a dream, and I'm your girlfriend's evil shadow. See? And that's when I told him, you're not going to hijack my optic lobe, man. I know you're trying to impose a hallucination. And then it went on. Now, in the morning, when I woke up, 3 hours later, the sunshine came in, hit me in the face, woke me up. And the first thing I thought, like, what the hell was that about? My girlfriend stirs, she sits up. And when she sat up, it was like lightning hit her. She took her hand and she slapped me. Robert! What, Chris? I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a little demon at the foot of the bed, and I tried to wake you and you wouldn't wake up. And I said, no, Chris. And I was going to tell her. And I said, no, Chris. And there was a flash of white light in the right side of my brain, like the neuralizer in Men in Black. Pooh! And this white light hit, and it said, don't tell her. If you tell her, she will lose her mind. She'll go crazy. Don't tell her. And I zipped up. I just didn't talk about it. But there was a marked change in both of us as a result of that. And it took 25 years and the crash of the World Trade Center to create a shock enough to bring that back into memory. And so I share it with you freely, because this is happening to people practically every day. And the poor people, are convinced by doctors, shrinks, psychiatrists that they're crazy. You're not crazy. This is part of the metaphysical life of a human being. It is a soul experience. So believe your own senses.
Yeah, interesting how some people are targets. If not, in fact, I don't know have either of you heard the story of during the Vietnam era? Apparently there was, I'm not sure if they're called Oculus, certain type of special glasses or headgear with sort of almost, what is the special the viewing lenses, nighttime, viewing, essentially technology during the Vietnam era.
There are two kinds. It's night vision and
right.
There's infrared vision.
Okay, here's what happened though. And you might have heard of this, the story where they put the headgear on and suddenly all around them, they saw demonic type entities. And it just, scared the hell out of them, basically. Every time they put this headgear on, that was what they would perceive, what they would experience. So, and
I wonder if that's because they're killing so many people. I haven't heard that story, but
never thought of that. Yeah, or that we have this energy around us all the time, really, and it's up to us to sanitize our space, is it not? Our spiritual space, and to do what Robert did. Really, he exorcised that entity, banished it. Basically, it was a powerful kind of. That was a really powerful.
Amazing experience. I've never had anything like that. That's amazing.
Your university people would probably like to hear that story. You should have him on your show maybe at some point. part
I'd
of
like
your
to, Robert.
panel.
Let's do a video together, Robert. Sure.
Okay, that'd be wonderful. I really am enjoying this very much, and it's very real, and it's only one of many experiences that I've had over years with various types of aliens. And it seems that I am marked. A friend of mine, when I told him about these things, he said, Robert, you know, you're protected, and somebody has put a mark on you that they can't mess with you. And I'm happy to hear that. But I've helped a lot of people recover from the trauma of alien abduction. Some of the people that are in Bud Hopkins' book, Missing Time, actually came to me to train
right here,
Tai Chi.
yeah, from 1981. This is the book.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first book of its kind, 1981. That's when it began.
Yes, he was a great man. He was a great man, Mr. Bud Collins.
Yeah.
Hopkins.
Bud Hopkins, excuse me. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of Captain Bob Collins, U.S. Air Force Captain, Foreign Technology Division, who wrote a book exempt from disclosure. And he told the truth of whatever the Air Force had been hiding for the longest time.
What about Colonel Corso? They worked together then, probably, for the foreign technology, presumably the same era.
Well, not the same era. He came into the Foreign Technology Division in the late 1960s.
Okay.
And Corso was there in the 50s and 60s.
What do you think of Corso? What do you think of Corso's testimony? Was he just telling the God's honest truth, or was he kind of just
100%?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think he's legitimate. Yeah.
And this Bob, you said, is Bob Colonel? Was it Bob Collins? Robert, let's get this one more time so we can. It's a lot of times because, I mean, we're born 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, and sometimes, I do a little.
His name is Captain Robert Collins.
Gotcha.
He passed away a couple of years ago, but he was one of the aviary. The aviary were 10 military officers, scientists, and what would you say, spooks, including many people that Brian and I know, who were commissioned by President Ronald Reagan to begin the disclosure process back in the 1980s. So they all took the birds' names, you know. So one was Condor, one was Hawk, another one was Seagull. Seagull was Dr. Bruce Maccabee, and I got to know many of them, and I was briefed. So that's why I take the code name MJ13.
Right. Gotcha.
I know what MJ12 knows.
Sure.
And a little bit more now.
Right. So, Brian, because our time is limited here, we're only a few more minutes left to go. It just dawned on me that we should just, maybe for 10, 15 minutes tops, focus on Canada. We added you to the Vancouver Island and Vancouver Minds groups, the show that we're live streaming here today with you, episode 341 of Pirate Radio podcasts. Myself, as always, your trusted host and companion, the Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder. Great to be with you here this fair and fine, really, March early spring day. We checked the daylight savings time. The clock alteration business. We were a little concerned that we might be having to get on top of things an hour ahead of time, ahead of what we have been throughout the winter.
Yeah, that's Sunday morning.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
So
thanks for telling me.
Okay, there we go. So, but Canada now, and Robert can chime in too. Cowichan and Mill Bay, and Brian Vike too. There's another Brian. Have you met Brian Vike up there in the Central Ontario? Houston, I think, is where he's based out of. Is it not? Houston, BC.
I haven't met him, but I know he's there. He's got his UFO group there for a long time.
Is he still alive? And he has retired, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything from him in recent years, so I don't know.
But you did journey. How far did you go during your travels? You met with the founder of the Radical magazine. His name escapes me now, but really great, upstanding.
Oh, Arthur Topham.
Sure. I mean, I
did a video in person with Arthur Topham. Yeah, it was around 2015. Yeah, he just died last year.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he died. Yeah.
Do you know what happened?
Well, I think it was with natural causes. He was 77.
Wow, he was a great guy. We helped to promote his radical newspaper.
Good writer. Yeah,
right. And he principled too. He stood his ground. He really stood his ground, and he fought the good fight. You know, he really did.
He did. So,
and
they really censored him. They really went after him. You know.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully, he's in a good, a better place now. Having studied these NDEs, I really do believe that if provided that we care for our consciousness, like the Buddha talked about, do good, cease evil, purify the mind. Come on, people, how complicated is that really? Work on it, right? So, but Canada, Cowichan Mill Bay, there's a stamp that I think it was just a few years ago commemorating this incident. There's been so many reports of UFO activity. BC is a real hotspot, I guess. My dad even had his own experience and encounter of sorts, which he now claims not to remember at all, even though we had these two extensive phone call interviews that ran for several hours. I connected with them following up after been out. Just there's a few small details as far as noise and smell. I forgot to press him on those 2 points, but yeah, his memory is now, for whatever reason, it's not there anymore, and it shouldn't be. It's not like he's still got his wits about him, and it doesn't make any sense other than the fact that what we hear about all the time. So, people's memories, how consciousness is. There's something, I don't know, maybe you can break it down and explain things a little better, but also within the Canadian context, what we're looking at, some famous just incidents that you can touch on, and what to expect over the course of the coming weeks, months, and so forth. There is no Canadian Space Force along the lines of what Trump has in the States, as far as I understand. But do we have our own Men in Black up there in Canada, essentially?
I don't know. I could do a plug for Jeff Silver. He's here in Vancouver. He's published his book called The Rising, the Alien Plan to Build an Enlightened City on Earth. And I did the first videos with him, about 30 hours of videos. But he's had a relationship with the gray aliens, and he's had like 26 contact events and lots of videos. So he's the one that really got me, developed my understanding of the gray aliens, and introduced me to Susie Hansen. Well, she's not in Canada. She's in New Zealand. The Dual Soul Connections, her book. But quite a positive perspective of the Greys and how they're working with the mantids, and they're part of this whole hybridization program. It seems to encompass the whole world. Like Richard Dolan says, is extremely covert but extremely widespread, like industrial scale. This idea of abduction and alien contact, the hybridization program. Yeah, so he might be somebody you want as a guest. He's got a lot of real direct experience,
Jewish fellow too, from the sounds of it.
Well, his father was, but not his mother, so he's actually not Jewish.
Yeah, well, it depends. I understand. There's depends how people look at it. I think it's the rabbis. What do they call them? The really serious fundamental rabbis. Yeah, it's got to come from the mother. The line, obviously.
But is Silver? I don't know. Is Silver a Jewish name?
It sounds kind of. Yeah, it sounds. Just an interesting.
Well, I guess
little,
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
In this case, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that.
No, it didn't dawn on me until it's just like I was like, oh, and Brian. Okay.
I'd like to recommend the website. There are many, many great Canadian UFO researchers, and I'm honored to have known some of them. One of them was Graham Conway, and one of the best UFO websites on this planet is ufobc.ca. And
I was an associate of theirs for 5 years. I joined just after he died, so I never met him. For Richard Tortorella's their president, and I've been meetings, and I still stay in touch with them. It's a great website.
I always remember him. Canadians have been very, very important. No one more important than Paul Hellyer.
Ah, right, yes.
Paul Hellyer and a little girl named Frances, 7 years old, are what brought me out of the shadows. I've been studying UFOs since 1956, but I was always undercover. But then in 2003, 2004, I read an essay called The Story of Frances on UFO BC. And it was about a little girl who had experienced a UFO abduction. And she did notes and drawings in her composition book. And I was so moved by it. And I said, pardon the expression, I really got pissed off because my brother, when he was 7 years old, was abducted in the Catskill Mountains, not far from where Whitley Strieber was abducted. And I said, we got to tell people, children are being traumatized by these entities, and they are altered for life, including my little brother, my brother Rudy. And so I read that, and that's when I decided to go public with what I know, because I looked and I said, how do I know so much about UFOs? Why do so many people seek me out for counseling and therapy through Tai Chi and yoga? And that's what made me go public, because I didn't want my UFO research to taint my reputation in the JFK assassination field. And I told my cousin, a Navy navigator, don't tell people that I'm studying UFOs because they'll use it to discredit my work on the JFK assassination. And lo and behold, after years of study, I found a letter from JFK to the CIA and NASA and the services, written November 12th of 1963, that said, Angleton has MJ executive. I gave that to Jim Mars, and Jim Mars took it, ran with it. He wrote Alien Agenda and the Fourth Reich as a result of that.
Wow.
I miss Jim Mars. He was one of the greatest of all in both fields.
Yeah, I had email exchanges with him. He was very kind to write back to me.
Yeah, he was really great.
Yeah,
wonderful person.
Great research.
And I know he's smiling. He's smiling on us right now.
Yeah.
Love doesn't die.
Sure, he had a great vibe and energy, obviously, and just he generated a lot of great karma. I would argue, as well as along with this fellow that we've just seen here appear on our slideshow, Panya Basabiku. So, who we referenced earlier, Brian, we'll definitely bounce that off you, see what you have to think. As far as the two of you join us here to commemorate Buddha's birthday, this business of your bipolar history, that's another issue which it's good to see that you've got in check.
I can talk about that. Yeah. It's bipolar, sort of the medical term, which is true enough, but I think it's channeling, sort of a result of channeling and losing control of it. Like the Buddha was opposed to channeling. Channeling today he warned it can lead to mental derangement in the channeler. Mm-hmm. But of course, you can get insights from it. It's very alluring. So I made mistakes with that, but it is called bipolar. I've been diagnosed with that.
Sure. So, there's some people that definitely just, if they stay on their meds, they are just wonderful. And if they stop if they go off their meds, then it's like, the things, life becomes a little more problematic. So big shout out here to Jethro, who, another, no stranger to the show, talking about they've heard about the first generation night vision devices. That's within the context of the seeing what appeared to be demonic type phenomenon, and it scared the hell out of these pilots, I guess, and they didn't want nothing more to do with this technology at all. So it showed non-physical beings, very interesting stuff. So he's having a great time here with us as we wind things down. Once again, episode 341 of Pirate Radio Podcast. A real pleasure not only to have Brian on board, of course, but Robert holding down the crow's nest, position and taking care of the duties, everything that's required via that end of the operation. So, Canada itself, though, let's just cover that before we call it a night here, if that's all right, gentlemen. Brian, have you heard about the stamp? Do you know about the Cowichan Bay incident, Mill Bay as well? I've got a Tibetan Buddhist teacher who she lived in that area, just off.
Vancouver Island?
Yeah, well, yeah, just not so far from the ferry terminal that takes you to either Vancouver or the islands, of course, the Gulf Islands. So
But
she's.
no, I'm not familiar with the UFO sighting there. No, I may have heard of it, but I don't know about it.
Oh, well, Robert, fill them in a little bit more then, just to kind of the rough rundown overview, if that's all right. I think
Sure, I can do it very quickly.
Sure, yeah.
I read about the Cowichan Hospital UFO incident, and I have a friend, Leanne Jones. She's a private investigator. She lives in Vancouver. And I mentioned it to her, and she said, well, why don't we reinvestigate this? And she got on it, and she went to Mill Bay and Cowichan, the hospital, and she tracked down the news reports. A nurse was on night duty, and she was attending a patient. The curtains were closed, so she went over to the curtains and parted them. She opened it, and she saw a UFO hovering at a tilted angle about 75 to 100 feet away. And she saw two men, humans, working on it. She thought that they were trying to fix something because, first of all, the UFO was tilted at an angle and just hovering. And then she said that they looked like they had a technical problem that they were trying to fix. And then one of them looked at her and she looked at him and they made eye contact. And then the guy, the alien pilot, told the other guy, hey, she's seeing us. And so they worked really fast. They straightened it out and off it went. So Leanne Jones went and investigated all of this, found the reports. Then she found the mayor of Mill Bay, Bill Quaife was his name, very fine gentleman. He was willing to talk, and he said that he had been involved in this because a UFO came over his house. It was at night. He was looking out the window, and there were some deer out in his yard, and this light lit up from above, and the deer were frozen, and they stayed frozen until the light went out. He went out to search for it. He followed it. He got in his car, and he followed it to the power station, and he saw the UFO over the power station, and it seemed to him that the UFO was taking electricity, energy, from the power station. Then there are two witnesses who saw the UFO over Mill Bay, moving slowly over Mill Bay, and they saw a tornadic force lifting water out of Mill Bay and putting it up into the UFO. So I wrote an article called UFO Piracy, and my thesis was that the UFOs and the alien entities are taxing us. They're taxing us for energy, water, and human resources. And it's a tax that we have to pay with this Greada Treaty that Eisenhower signed. And it's the top secret. Above top secret, there's another very important Canadian UFO researcher and scientist whose name was Wilbert Smith.
Oh, yes.
And,
yes.
Right?
He was great in 1950s.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he was an expert in magnetism. And he had top secret clearance. He came to the United States and he went back to Canada. And he told the Canadians the UFO secret has a higher classification even than the hydrogen bomb.
Huh.
That just gives you a hint of why the cover.
He said he saw the bodies and the wreckage, and he got cancer and died quickly in the early 60s, in his 50s. So I thought, oh my God, did they inject him from cancer? Because he talked. He was here in Vancouver, and he said that he saw bodies and wreckage.
Do you know that George?
Club at that time. So
George.
There's no evidence that they killed him, but I wonder if they injected him with cancer.
So it was a fast-acting cancer, was it?
Well, he died quickly of cancer, and he was in his 50s.
That's incredible. Well, George Knapp, just to follow up on what we're talking about here, George Knapp, occasional host of Coast to Coast AM, an actual show that Robert himself is no stranger to. He's appeared as a guest on multiple occasions. Hope to see him invited back again at some point, obviously. But Mr. Knapp claims that with all of his years of covering the Las Vegas Mafia, that the UFOs and the whole business of ETs is indeed, he found it to be more dangerous and ultimately intrepid. Absolutely. So very much that supports what what you're hitting on.
Yeah,
here,
the secrecy, maintaining secrecy. That's their rule.
And spin too, just total muddying of the waters, disinformation and confusion. Yeah, that's right. So, and okay, well, there we go. Just one last item then, and this is kind of a little bit of left field, not entirely, but Mahayana Buddhism. Are you still a believer that Mara, what the Koreans refer to here as Ma Wong, the king of evil? Ma is one of the meanings for Ma in Korean, along with hemp or mother or magic, or it has a lot of usages, or it means making too. Mandalda, like a mandala, but that the king of evil, Ma Wong, Mara, the great, I guess the equivalent of Satan in Christianity, essentially. So, Mara, I know you. What did Christ say? Satan, get behind thee. Just right upon both of them, spending their time in, seeking. I guess Christ had the world offered to him, and all of its riches, what have you, fame and wealth and so forth. But the Buddha just cutting through all the matrix, essentially. So, but do you still believe that Mahayana Buddhism is basically a product of confusion?
Well, that's a mainstream Theravada view that Mara made Mahayana. I wrote that in my book, Freeing the Buddha. I thought this is absolute ultimate statement.
Right.
Because I was a Tibetan Buddhist in 1991. I'm very thankful I started with Shambhala, but I converted to Theravada when I was a monk in Thailand. So I would say I still believe Mara made Mahayana, and that is a mainstream Theravada view.
Okay.
But Mara's not all bad. It's my second favorite religion in the world is Mahayana Buddhism after Theravada Buddhism.
Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of common ground, obviously, too. There's the two do overlap in many instances. It's just that for Theravada is the way of the elders, I believe, is what it means, and it's they really don't like the Hinayana label being used at all. It's like highly offensive to them because it means the narrow way versus Maha, meaning great, which also, it's interesting, Robert, you might get a kick out of this. Have you stopped to realize that making America healthy again, the acronym is Maha, great, making, so that's RFK Jr. I don't even know if RFK Jr. is aware of what he did with that one, but it works for me.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
So, Brian, where can we find you? We do have your University Galacticus website here. Is that the best place to contact you?
I would say BitChute is probably most of my videos on bitchute.com, the Brian Ruhe channel. I got 3,500 videos there for you.
Oh yeah, all various different playlists as well too, broken down.
30 playlists. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so and it's great to see that you're doing well these days, and really appreciate you taking the time, making the effort. I think we're gonna have this archived here, before too long, and find that hopefully it can be of some benefit to people out of there, that are looking for greater clarity, to some of the questions that they may have. Robert, of course, Robert Morningstar over on Substack. But what bloody hell? There's the other website you often. Oh well, the show, the Morningstar Report, of course. But we just use your Substack link and let people.
Well, that's it. That Morningstar Report is published on Substack, and it's broadcast on Revolution Radio and a couple of other places, Home Network TV.
Home Alan.
I mentioned this discovery that I made, and I would love to share just a couple of pictures with you. It won't take long.
All right. You go ahead there. Quickly do that.
You'll be the first to see it after Dr. John Brandenburg.
So what are we looking at here once again?
I'm going to show you. First, let me share the screen.
I'll stop.
I'm going to show you 4 pictures.
Yeah.
Taken by Athena landing on the moon. And I discovered something. First of all, let me show you the true colors of the moon. This is what NASA has been hiding for many years. This picture came out in 2018. I discovered it in a Polish astronomy magazine, and I knew instantly, this is the first real color picture of the moon that's ever been released. I downloaded it, and guess what the file name was? the file name in all capital letters said United States Trump enhancement.jpg.
JPG. Oh, I see JPEG. Right, gotcha.
JPEG, right? That's the kind of file it is. But United States Trump enhancement. So President Trump had everything to do with releasing the first real color photograph of the moon. And as you can see, it's not black and white. The mares are not flat asphalt parking lots. They have terrain, topography. This one is black, in my theory. This is the...
Look at that. The parallel lines.
Yeah, but look at the Sea of Tranquility is a charred out chasm, and the Sea of Serenity is a mound. And it's orange and brown. And this is all black. So what happened is a gigantic meteor or asteroid hit in what we call the Mare Tranquillitatis. And the ejecta landed over here and covered up the Mare Serenitatis. And this is where a blue ghost just landed in this region up here.
And then fell over on its side, supposedly.
No. Blue ghost landed okay. The other one is the one that landed in the South Pole in Mons Mouton. And that's way down here on the other side somewhat, near the South Pole. But that one's the one they say tipped over. And I find that hard to believe.
What is the moon? Quick question. Just what is the moon, its size, diameter, in comparison to say, the Earth?
About 1/4. About 2,500.
Does it actually ring hollow, and as if it is?
It has rung. Every time that they crashed the landing, the rocket, the booster down into it, it rang. Sometimes for 3 hours. Some people said 8 hours. So there are chambers, resonant chambers inside the moon. Wow. So let me go quickly through the rest of them. So this is a typical photograph of Athena, sister of Apollo, and my favorite Greek goddess. So this is the moon, obviously kind of nondescript. So I take pictures like this and I enhance this region. And you'll see what detail I'm able to bring out when I show you this. I'm going to cut right to the chase and show you this picture. And this is the one that captured my attention, right? We've got this heavenly glow up here and this rainbow down here. You said, wow, there's something special about that picture. Let me work on it. So I put it into my my very simple computer graphics, and look what came out.
Lots of light.
Yeah, lots of light, but I thought it was plasma, and Dr. Brandenburg thinks that this may be one of the first photographs ever of the solar wind. And that this is plasma following magnetic lines of flux streaming onto the moon and around it. But it can only be captured at special angles like this one. Just fortunate, not fortuitous. Fortuitous means by chance. Fortunate means lucky. But look at the terrain now with the enhancement that I did. You can see the contours, you can see depth, and there's a lot more to share. But I'm very happy to share it with Captain Sinclair.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful.
Robin Hood and Brian Ruhe.
Oh my
so
God.
There we have it.
Yeah, it's amazing. So just one final thing then, I guess, is the solar plasma it's been alleged this is something that the UFOs they fuel on.
They fuel on, and they also surround their craft with the plasma, and that may be the grease that makes them slide through space-time more easily.
Okay.
You know?
All right. Okay.
Brian, I'm going to send you a picture taken in 1939 in Vancouver, British Columbia, over the new Vancouver City Hall.
Yeah, the UFO. I've seen it.
Really?
It was
what
two brothers were there, so it was two witnesses.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Well, that's
an amazing UFO photo right here in Vancouver.
That's
fabulous photo.
Why is that not on a stamp? You know,
I'm surprised. I'm certain that they if they did a stamp on Cowichan UFO, they had to have taken the lead from the article that Leanne Jones and I did, UFO piracy. in a nutshell. So that's great.
All right.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And, great to meet you, Brian.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Robert. And that's the best thing. Great to meet you tonight. Thanks.
That's wonderful.
Thanks.
Love it. Love it. So get asked just both of you gentlemen to well, actually, Brian, do you have any upcoming events? Anything that people can be alerted to as far as what's on the calendar?
Tomorrow morning, the 10 a.m. tomorrow, my meetup group, Prepare for ET Contact. We're talking about the hybridization school of thought. I've got TJ Val as a guest speaker.
Right. Return guest.
Yes, then I go to meetup.com and look for Preparing for ET Contact, a meetup group. Or I can send you the link. Yeah.
I see. So, and anyone can they can get access to the link. Now you've got a limited amount of seating, but people.
Well, no, it's Zoom, so anyone can come. It's on Zoom, so anyone in the world can join us.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got about 10 people signed up, or 11 right now.
Okay. Yeah. Good stuff. So, all right then. There we go. Just ask both of you to mute out. You can either stick around, and hang out via the back end of things. We cue up the outro or sail on to whatever pressing affairs you have on the go here this evening. Of course, it is afternoon, Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. here via South Korea. We will be back. I'm not sure about late night in Korea. I'm kind of leaning towards putting something together. We haven't launched any 2025 edition of Late Night in Korea, so it might be time, especially given the fact of what we recently witnessed here with these supposed accidental bombs being dropped. Okay, we're gonna have to get that cat on the camera. We've had the slideshow in place, but let's see. This is your replacement kitty. You lost your poor little guy, but this fellow showed up. How did you find him? And what is his name again?
His name is Happy. He's 2 years old. Yeah, I just found him off a local website in East Vancouver. Things going on. Someone was giving away kittens.
Oh, so beautiful. You love black cats too.
Yeah, just by coincidence, they were giving away a black cat. My last cat was black, so it's kind of like Paul McCartney. I don't believe he died and replaced, but my black cat before looks the same as this black cat, so people don't realize it's a different cat.
That's right.
Happy Cat, that's his name.
Right.
Happy.
So, okay, nice to see you, Happy Cat. So good stuff. Yeah. Maybe he'll have a chance to meet. Well, our three guys here are pretty much zonked out right now, doing as what cats do most of the time and sleep, of course. So. Yeah. But we'll get you to mute out there, Brian, and maybe catch you on the flip flop here. Just cue up the outro, of course. Remind people that we could be back with Late Night in Korea, 11:30 p.m. here, South Korean time, Monday evening. That's early morning hours via the West, of course. Afternoons in various parts of Europe. It's always great to connect with the likes of Martin Taylor and other European friends and fellow pirate mateys, including you lurkers. That's something that really we would like to see more of. Don't be shy, folks. Always really appreciate having the chance to meet new people, personalities, hear your thoughts, comments, and questions. Any support that you can offer, of course, whether through PayPal, Pirate One Radio at protonmail.com. The merchandise end of things. We've seen some of that in the slideshow here, of course. Half of everything we do manage to generate goes directly back to charity. Not only does it serve to support our efforts here, keep us afloat so that we're not running straight out of pocket or in the red. That's a color that we're not really all that big on here via Skull Port Harbour, folks, if you catch our drift. But hashtag WWRHD, what would Robin Hood do? Presumably, take whatever steps he could. He and his fellow band of merry pirate mateys in reaching out to the poor, underprivileged, the orphans and widows among us who really stand to benefit from a little bit of a hand up, as it were. So, having said all this, on behalf of Captain Long John Sinclair, all the rest of the crew here down at Skull Port Harbour, until we meet again via these high, often all too intrepid digital seas, I'm your host, as always, the Show's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder, reminding you as always, keep your ear to the ground and eyes to the sky. Tally-ho!
Aye now, there we be. Having carefully looked over each of our navigation panel instruments,
checking every level, switch, dial, cable, knob, and pulley, by all accounts and indications, we indeed see it's time, once again, to drop anchor inside Mystic Bay.
draw an end to yet another week of World Pirate Radio Live.
Remember,
If you're looking for a little more animated online action,
keep in mind we've likely got yet another great free-flowing Rogues Gallery after show.
coming up for the next hour in one of our more premium exclusive and remote digital underground online pirate hideaways. Also, if you yourself have a new,
Novel, intriguing, or otherwise underreported idea, unique individual, or pressing item in mind, be sure to either drop us a line directly over on WPRPN.com or fire us a quick email
via Pirate One Radio at protonmail.com.
We're always open to exploring fresh creative suggestions, intriguing guest ideas, cutting-edge discussion topics, and captivating themes.
Remember, WPRPN.com member site subdomain links are also always available.
Great for artists, musicians, podcasters, bloggers, social media personalities,
Or pretty much just any old land lover.
looking to boost their online visibility, presence, and reach.
Basic personal profile accounts can be launched for just $60 per year.
Staking your claim now helps not only strengthen you and the network, we're also looking out for the little guy. That's right, folks. As much as half of all WPRPN's profits are redirected right back into the hands of the people who really need it most. Community charity. After all, we are the Robin Hood.
You can further embark on your own personal pirate journey by either liking, sharing,
Commenting on, subscribing to, or just following us via virtually any mainstream social media platform, including Twitter, Facebook,
Gab,
or Minds.com. So don't forget to become engaged. Until we meet again out on the high digital seas, I'm your host as always, the ship's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder. Tally-ho.